At what age should a child possibly start taking these different instruments? When do they have the sort of the brain power, the attention span? But what
Right.
would you say for the most popular ones? What would be a good age to start somebody on piano?
It depends on the child. To read music, you have to be able to start at the top of the page and move your eyes from left to right and then down the page. A lot of 3 and 4-year-olds will just look at a picture and point and maybe recite the words because they've been read to, but following, their eyes need to be able to track.
Okay.
So 4 or 5 for piano. We have 3 who teach violin, and they really recommend that the child learn to track and read, maybe take some keyboard for 6 months before they have to learn to hold the instrument up.
Welcome to another episode of Best of Johnston County, brought to you by Breeden Law Office. Our host, Jonathan Breeden, an experienced family lawyer with a deep connection to the community, is ready to take you on a journey through the area that he has called home for over 20 years. Whether it's a deep dive into the love locals have for the county or unraveling the complexities of family law, Best of Johnston County presents an authentic slice of this unique community.
Hello, and welcome to another edition of the Best of Johnston County Podcast. I'm your host, Jonathan Breeden, and today we have with us the owner of the Neighborhood Academy of Music in Clayton, right there on Highway 42, Dr. Christine Rogers. She's going to talk to us about all the different types of music lessons they have. They also do music rentals. They also have adaptive classes and art lessons. It's really a fascinating business that is much bigger in scope than even I realized, and my children have been going there for many, many years. But before we do that, I want to remind everybody that you should like, subscribe, or follow the Best of Johnston County Podcast wherever you find the Best of Johnston County Podcast or wherever you're listening to it today, whether it be Apple, Spotify, YouTube, LinkedIn, TikTok, so that you'll be aware of future episodes of the Best of Johnston County Podcast. The Best of Johnston County Podcast comes out every Monday, and we have all kinds of great guests that have already been on and they'll be on in the future. So like and subscribe, give us a 5-star review so that you'll be aware of future episodes. Hello, Dr. Rogers.
Hi, how are you?
Good. I'm glad you were willing to come in. I know I had to try to talk you into it, but I'm awful glad you're here.
Thank you.
Tell everybody who you are and what you do.
Well, my name is Christine Rogers. I've been married for 56 years to my husband, have 2 children that are grown, and busy life. For 24 years, I have owned and operated Neighborhood Academy of Music in Clayton. And it's been a wonderful thing to span the world between teaching and a business.
There's a big difference between teaching and a business.
There is, and I'm part of both worlds.
I don't know a whole lot about teaching other than I teach the young lawyers who work for me, but I do know a little bit about running a business, and it is hard work, and it is often thankless and a lot of hours people don't see.
It's true.
And so I got a lot of respect for anybody that can run a business and run a business that's profitable, because running a business and running a profitable business are 2 separate things.
It's true. Very
So,
true.
well, tell us a little bit about your background. I know you taught at that school that I don't really like, Chapel Hill, for a while, being the NC State graduate that I am. But anyway, so just like, how'd you get into music? Were you music as a child? Where'd you grow up?
Oh, well, that's interesting because at about age 4 or 5, my mom's neighbor, her name was Jean, and I remember her, said, "Could you just send Christina over for piano lessons?" I think she wanted this little darling to be at her recitals. And so I started taking piano lessons with Jean. When I was 7, we moved to South Florida. For several years, my parents did not have a teacher for me. It was a different age. There was one car, Dad went to work, and Mom stayed home with the kids. One day, Dad brought home a bunch of music books from his work. Someone was getting rid of them. And we had a piano because Dad could play somewhat. And by the way, I just lost him. He's 90.
Oh.
He was 97.
Oh,
He
my
passed
goodness.
away in April of
97.
this
That's
year.
a long, long life.
Yes.
Yes.
But I can credit Dad with bringing the books home, and I just sat down and started working through them methodically. And they finally realized we have to get a teacher for this girl.
Oh, man.
So it was a lifelong thing, really, that I just loved playing the piano. When I was 13, I started playing for church. I played for my elementary school chorus, then for church. And after we were married, I had a couple years of college. I'm, from that generation of women who did not do 4 years of college. They
Right.
did a couple years and started raising a family. I married my high school sweetheart. And so after the kids were in elementary school, I went back to get the first degree.
Okay.
And after that, I started teaching in public school and enjoyed that, but just started chomping away at the master's.
Okay.
And then finally the certificate of advanced study, and then finally the PhD.
Right.
I was 51 when I finished my PhD.
Man, that's some dedication right there. I mean,
I love learning.
yeah,
I love
that's
teaching.
that's definitely lifelong
Yeah,
learning. A PhD at 51.
I just love teaching. I mean, some people want to perform. I want to see my students perform.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Well, that's cool. That's cool. So where'd you get a PhD from?
UNC Greensboro,
Okay.
which has been one of the top 10 in the nation for music education. A lot of people don't realize that,
Right.
but it is a wonderful school for music ed.
What-
So is Appalachian and East Carolina.
Yeah, no. I mean, Greensboro has a tremendous music program and
Mhm.
music education. I'm definitely familiar with that.
Mhm.
And their entire, I mean, I would still argue they may have the best teacher preparation program for any type of teachers, including music
Yes.
teachers, maybe in the state. And of course it started as, I think, Greensboro's Teachers College back
Yes,
in the
it
day.
did. Yeah.
I believe I had a great aunt who's passed away that may have graduated from
Uh-huh.
there, and she became a teacher in North Carolina. I think that's where she went. So, and that would have been in, oh my goodness, she would have gone in the late 30s, and I think
Yeah.
she went to Greensboro's
Wow.
Teachers College. So yeah, it's just fascinating. And I think people need to be aware of that. The university system in North Carolina is great. All the
It
universities are first class, as much as I joke
It's
about
true.
Chapel Hill and their basketball team losing the ACC championship to NC
I-
State, but
Oh,
in 3
well.
straight football games. But no, we're very blessed in this state to have the
Mhm.
university system
Yeah.
that we have, along with the community college system that we have
Yes.
here in North
Yes.
Carolina with
I-
Johnston Community College
I've
and
taught
the other
there too.
there, I think we have 56 community colleges in North Carolina.
Yeah.
So, well, that's great. So I know at some point you taught at Chapel Hill.
I did.
Oh man. Okay. How did that happen?
Well, my husband's office moved north of Smithfield. I taught for Rowan Salisbury system, but my husband's office was in Harnett County. Then they moved north of Smithfield. At the same time, I was able to become a professor at UNC Chapel Hill in the music department. So we're like Smithfield, Chapel Hill. We moved to Clayton.
Okay.
And at the time, I mean, we're talking 27 years ago. It was busy on the highway, but not as busy.
Right.
For 4.5 years, I taught at UNC.
Okay. What'd you teach?
Well, I worked with future teachers. They
Okay.
loved me because I'd been with Rowan Salisbury
Okay.
for 10 years of teaching, and I was an experienced teacher. I worked with the band people who needed to take, in this system here, in our public system,
Okay.
if you're certified for music, you should be able to teach anything from kindergarten through 12th grade, band, chorus, anything,
Right.
elementary, general,
Right.
and I had taught middle school band. I had taught elementary general. My student teaching had been in high school. So they were like, oh, she's done it all.
Right.
So I worked with the band people about what if you get a section of chorus? What are you going to teach them? How do you form the vowels when you sing? How do you light up your face? I didn't work with the band people per se, because that was a little out of field, but except, for if they were going to sing. And then the elementary general. In fact, we had a teacher who just retired in the Johnston County system that I taught music at Greensboro. I
Okay.
had a year at
Oh,
Greensboro
that's awesome.
also.
That's awesome.
He taught elementary general music, and he just retired.
Oh man.
So, what was your question?
Well, the question was, what did you teach at Chapel Hill?
Oh,
It sounds like you
okay.
taught future
Music
music
ed.
educators.
I
Music
did.
education is what you
and I
taught
worked
there.
with a master's degree students. They had to put together a portfolio. We went out once a week. We took the school van and went into the schools, and They watch me teach. I watch them teach.
Oh, that's great.
I did supervision out in the field. I had students as far away as Winston, Kernersville, which was really quite a trek from Clayton.
Right.
So the day I heard that South Point Mall was going in, I was on my way to Chapelville, and I heard that there would be 85,000 more cars once all the housing, the doctors, the dentists, the lawyers, everybody got there. I'm like, I'm hanging this up. I can't do this commute anymore.
Okay.
So I thought, let's just do something here in this growing community.
Of Clayton, right?
Yeah,
And so you
yeah.
said, let's start this.
Yes.
So how did you come up with the name Neighborhood Academy of Music?
Oh, my husband and I were eating a Sunday dinner at a restaurant, and I'm like, what should we name this place? We are in a neighborhood, it's the Walnut Creek neighborhood,
Right.
which our building fronts 42. But I looked across the street and there was Applebee's neighborhood
Bar and
restaurant.
Grill. Right? That's Applebee's sketch chain, right? That's
Yes.
exactly
So
right.
I thought, hey, neighborhood would work. We're sitting in a neighborhood. We want to be neighborly
Okay.
people. So
I got you.
that's what happened.
So yeah. So when did the business open?
In 2000,
2000.
I was still on the faculty at UNC.
Okay.
I had one afternoon a week. In fact, the bowling alley down the street rented me a room while it was being built, but I incorporated in 2000. And then waiting on the building to get built, we ended up with 4 pianos in my living room to teach group piano. And of course, I have a baby grand in my living room too, but those were the days.
Those were the days. Well,
Yeah.
that's when I moved to Johnston County, was in 2000, and
Okay.
Rainbow Lanes was fairly new. And I
That's
remember
where it was.
they built your building, and the DMV was built beside it.
That's right.
DMV, I guess, has moved out of that location
Yes.
now, but it was there right there on Highway 42. And I used to go to the DMV and do hearings to try to help people get their driver's licenses back when I did a lot more criminal law than I do now.
Mhm.
And, your building was there. And then a few years later, the eye doctors, the Salters built a
Yes,
building.
the
That was maybe
Salters.
because they were over in the Lowe's Food Shopping Center.
Yes.
And the funny story is they were my neighbors in Amelia Village. When I moved here in 2000, they were coming here to be new eye doctors and getting started. I was coming here to be an attorney. We were the first people to live in Amelia Village.
Oh, yeah.
It was brand new. They didn't have but like 3 buildings. And we lived next to each other. And they had a small child who I think now is out of college.
Ellie.
That's how.
There's
Right.
Ellie was a student at
Right.
the neighborhood.
So yeah.
Oh,
So
yeah.
and we're still friends today. And
Mhm. They're
that
wonderful people.
they were, and they would
Yeah.
cook me meals as a single
Yeah.
guy with no girlfriend.
Oh.
But they ended up building a building, there
Mhm.
beside yours, Clarity
Yes.
Vision. That
Yeah.
may have been like maybe 2010, maybe a little bit after
Yeah.
that. But so now there's a series of buildings
Mhm.
there right there for you. And then a dentist came in across from them. So now you
Yes.
have like
Yeah.
4 or 5 buildings there on 42. You got the Rainbow Lanes, and then you have the buildings, you have an older office building, and then you've got the 3 or 4 buildings. You're in
Mhm.
there. There's a
Mhm.
Walker
Edward
Lamb, the
Jones.
attorney
Mhm.
firm is there.
Yes.
Edward Jones is in
Mhm.
one of the buildings there as well.
Horizon Medical.
Horizon Medical, right?
Mhm.
And so so it's neat. So everybody listening should absolutely know what we're talking about on 42 going into Clayton. If you're
Yeah.
coming from 4042 or coming out of Clayton to go to the hospital, if you're coming from
Mhm.
downtown Clayton. So what all? I mean, it's a massive organization now. You have over 20 teachers. You're
Yes.
teaching over 20 instruments. What are some of the most popular classes that y'all have?
Guitar, piano, voice. We have a fair number of ukulele students, percussion, drums. We have conga, cajon, and then, of course, the trap set, the percussion set. We have a couple teachers who teach drums.
Okay.
Guitar and piano, voice and drums are the most popular,
Most
I would
popular.
say. Mhm.
Yeah. Well, my daughter takes violin there.
Oh, yes.
And-
I
and-
forgot the
and
violin.
she
Oh,
really has
my.
enjoyed that.
Oh, yes. We have probably 60 violin students.
Oh, man.
We have
Okay.
a lot of the public schools in Johnston County. The schools have a violin program, and a lot of times the kids will take to it like a fish in water, and they're like, I want more lessons. So there's ensembles for violin, not for beginners, but when they get a little more advanced, and then there's private lessons. for
Okay.
violin.
Yeah, well, she takes a private lesson there,
Uh-huh.
and y'all do a series of recitals at the end of the year at the
We
Clayton Center. I
do.
went to that.
Mhm.
I really enjoyed that, and
Mhm.
yeah, I saw all different levels of students
Oh,
on that
yes.
stage. I saw
Yes.
students that looked like they could have been in a movie. They could play like
Yes.
recording artists, and I saw students that were brand new. That
Yes.
were, I mean, it was really a great thing. So if you have a student at whatever level they're at, I think you can serve them because I've seen students all levels
Yes.
at these
For
recitals.
sure.
I think one of the things that I did not know that you did was art classes. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yes. We have a teacher, and she is a college student, but very adept at teaching. Our former art teacher had a master's degree in art. And when she was moving to the Boone area, I'm like, oh man, I interviewed several, and she told me my student is the one to hire. So she's the one, and she's done very well
Okay.
teaching.
Well, cool. So you have
Yeah.
art classes. You also have some adaptive music classes. I know you
Yes.
teach at least one or two kids that has autism. Tell me a little bit about
Yes.
that.
We have some nonverbal autistic children who come. We have several who are blind or nearly blind. We just try to adapt to them, children who are attention deficit disorder or hyperactivity. It's amazing. We've had children who were dyslexic that when they started to play the piano, thumbs together and looking at the image of notes with stems up, notes with stems down, going this way, that way, it seemed to help with the dyslexia. We just try to serve.
Right. Okay. Well, and I think you serve pretty much all ages. I mean,
We
I
do.
think I know that I was talking to you earlier about my first interaction with your business was back in late 2010, 2011, when my now 14-year-old son was about 15 to 18 months old.
Yes.
And he was there doing kinder music.
Mhm.
I know you don't have the kinder music for the babies now, but
Mhm.
you do have young Mozarts that start as young as
Yes.
3. Tell me about
Yes.
that.
It's a music and movement class. It's similar to kinder music in some ways, and we do miss having kinder music. Our kinder music teacher retired from teaching kinder music. But music for little Mozarts is music and movement. They sing, they do circle dances and activities, but it also has a keyboard component. One of our larger rooms has 4 keyboards in it, and the children put Beethoven Bear at the low end of the keyboard and Mozart Mouse at the high end. And they learn low and high, and they learn where middle C is, and they start playing simple melodies. Most of the children are 4 that start there, but we have had some 3-year-olds, and we recommend it for 4, 5s, and even 6-year-olds as a preparatory to keyboard or piano.
Okay. And you also offer adult classes and adult
Oh,
lessons
yes.
too, correct?
Yes, we do. We have a lot of retirees who come. They're like, I always wanted to learn to play the guitar, or I wanted to play violin, and now's the time. So,
Okay. Well, that's great.
Have family law questions? Need guidance to navigate legal challenges? The compassionate team at Breeden Law Office is here to help. Visit us at www.breedenfirm.com for practical advice, resources, or to book a consultation. Remember, when life gets messy, you don't have to face it alone.
So I guess one question that all parents ask themselves, and I'm going to ask you, at what age should a child possibly start taking these different instruments? When do they have the sort of the brain power, the attention span, to start? I know each instrument is different, but what would
right.
you say for the most popular ones? What would be a good age to start somebody on piano?
It depends on the child. To read music, you have to be able to start at the top of the page and move your eyes from left to right and then down the page. A lot of 3 and 4-year-olds will just look at a picture and point, and maybe recite the words because they've been read to. But following, their eyes need to be able to track.
Okay.
So 4 or 5 for piano. We have 3 who teach violin, and they really recommend that the child learn to track and read, maybe take some keyboard for 6 months before they have to learn to hold the instrument up
And move
and
their fingers.
manipulate.
Right.
Yeah. Yes, it's tiring for a young child. Drums, 6.
Okay.
Uh,
So age for violin, 5, 6.
yes, and
Okay.
recommend maybe 6 months of piano so they
Okay.
can learn to read the treble clef staff a little bit
Okay.
without the manipulation issues. And guitar, if they're very young, 4 or 5, we recommend ukulele because it's smaller.
Right.
There's manipulation issues if
Right.
they're small.
So guitar 6, 7, 8
Yes.
for an actual guitar.
Yes, that works.
Okay.
Mhm.
And,
you can get half-size guitars and 3/4 size. You can get smaller instruments. They
Okay.
don't have to be the big one for the kid.
Okay. All right. Cool. Cool. I didn't know that. My mom, she really wanted me. I took guitar lessons and I am not musical. And I really I just didn't pay. I just was not interested. You know what I mean? And I
Gotcha.
think I was
Yeah.
8 or 9 and I did it for a little while and music wasn't my thing, which
Got
is
it.
fine. Like,
Oh, yeah,
I
takes
think
all
I'm right.
time.
I mean, but I appreciate her introducing me to it, but
Mhm.
it wasn't my thing. I don't have a ton of natural rhythm or anything like that.
Wow.
Fortunately, I married. My wife is a very good singer and was
Oh,
able to sing in
wow.
college. So what musical
Oh.
talent my children have gotten working with your program, their natural talent, I think would definitely come from their mother, definitely not their father. So the standard, we'll sort of move on this. People say, okay, well, do they come once a week for 30 minutes? Like, I mean,
Usually.
is that what it
That's
is?
usually.
Okay. All right. So most of these lessons are 30-minute lessons. They're once a week.
Mhm.
And then the student is expected to practice outside of the
For
lesson.
sure. Parents think of music lessons as going to practice, which you go to practice for basketball, for soccer, but with music, you practice at home
Right.
and you
Right.
go for a lesson
Yes.
so the teacher
Yes.
can lead you onward.
Yes, no, you're right. You're right. And and our children take piano and they
Uh-huh.
need to practice.
Mhm.
We make them practice at least 5 days a week.
Good for you.
Yeah, so that
Yes.
so they have to practice in order to get their screens. So you can do everything's about
Oh.
screens with these kids nowadays.
Uh-huh.
So
Yeah.
they practice, and they've been doing it a few years now. They've gotten to where they're pretty good at it, and it's much more enjoyable to listen to when they practice now
Oh,
than it was
sure.
when they started
Oh,
because
sure.
they can play just about most songs that you hear they can now play. So
Yeah.
it's a lot of fun. So
That's
and one last thing y'all do that people realize you rent instruments.
we do.
One of my executive assistant here rents an instrument from you
Okay.
for her child to go to the middle school at I think Riverwood Middle School.
Uh-huh.
So you rent a lot of instruments. Is that
Yes.
is that its own separate wing of the business?
It's all right there at the office. In fact, this week we received 24 huge boxes for our fall rentals. We usually rent about 220 a year, and we've already received 167 of those. My assistants check them all in. They have to unpack them, check serial numbers, make sure they match the tag on the case, make sure that no bridges fell out of the violins, that everything's there, that there's valve oil for the trumpet and those sort of things. And yes, we rent, and it's a rent to own program.
Okay.
So the parent can rent, or the grandparent a lot of times rents. And for the first 2 months, there is pay for 1 month and get the second month at no charge. But then after that, it's every month, and most parents pay for a damage voucher in case, we had a van back over a trumpet one year.
Oh no.
And it wasn't even the mother, it was a carpool van, and it wasn't even the mother and the company. It happens.
Yeah, no, it
let's
does
fix
happen.
it.
So I mean, what does it cost what's the average cost to rent a trumpet?
Ah,
I mean,
I
it's not-
should have checked the
Right.
prices.
Okay.
It's in the $43-$44 range.
Per month. Okay.
Yes.
So affordable.
Yes.
Same thing with
And-
most of the other middle school instruments. Most of the people you rent to are middle
Yes.
school students, I believe.
Yes. And it is rent to own, and you can pay, the rental is actually less than 40. But if you get the damage waiver, it's,
Okay.
puts it up, and it's worth it to have it, in case
Right.
somebody
So I have
backs
to-
over
right.
it, or some kid knocks over your cello in school and breaks the neck or something. But with rent to own, you can pay slow boat to China that way, or you can call at any time and get a payoff, and there's a large discount for a payoff.
Okay.
And as like violinists, if they're third graders, they start out with a half size usually, and then they can trade it in to a 3/4 and finally a full size, and equity transfers.
Okay.
And even if they pay it off, the equity transfers.
Oh, I didn't know
Yes.
that.
And
Okay.
then for the band instruments, within a year, if they start out with flute and the band teacher says, we really need more saxophones, they can trade within a year for $20. They can trade for sax.
Okay.
So it's a good program. Now the saxes and cellos are a little more to rent, but the smaller instruments, most people start with the violin, clarinet, trumpet, flute, trombone. And then there's also the sax and the cello, the tenor saxophone that we can order, French horn. We can
Okay.
order those if they want one.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Cool. That's great. That's
Yeah.
great. That's a tremendous program. I know I tried to play the trumpet in middle school. That didn't go great, but I didn't really practice. That was part of the problem.
Oh,
But I
yeah.
remember renting my trumpet, similar thing, like a rent-to-own thing with place was Music Masters in Laurinburg. So anyway, they were neighbors of mine, and
Oh,
they
yeah.
were super nice people. And anyway, so I think that's a great program because
Oh,
we need to lower the barrier to entry to music, and I think
Mhm.
that's what you're able to do with
Mhm.
your rental program. So I guess the last question I would ask you is, what do you love most about Johnston County?
The people. They are so friendly. I hear of this one did this and this one did that. I'm on a couple social media groups where, there was this happened and that happened. The people I meet are so kind and so nice and so helpful. And Johnston County's a great place to live. It's a great place to rear your children.
I agree 100%.
Yeah.
And almost everybody, we ask that question at the end of every episode. And I mean, we're about 40 episodes in by now. And
Yeah.
it's always the people, and that's what I love about this place. I've been here about
Mhm.
the same amount of time you have been,
Mhm.
and it's just going to keep getting better. How can people get in touch with you at Neighborhood Academy of Music if they want to reach out and learn more about the programs that you have? I know you have a great website. Your website is excellent.
Thank you. The best way is to call 919-359-6105. Or you can go to our website and look, but there's not a link from the website to the email. The email is listed there. My email is listed there. And I'm like, don't put my email up there with a link. I get too many emails.
Emails, I
Anyway,
got
let
you.
them go ahead and type it in or let
Okay.
them call.
Okay.
So
What is the website?
it's www.neighborhoodacademyofmusic.com. It's
All right.
the long thing.
All right. Well, that's excellent. Well, we would like to thank Dr. Christine Rogers for coming on and being our guest on this episode of the Best of Johnston County podcast. And we'd like you to remind you again to like or follow or subscribe to this podcast wherever you're seeing it, and give it a 5-star review down at the bottom so our visibility will be increased. Until next time, I'm your host, Jonathan Breeden.
That's the end of today's episode of Best of Johnston County, a show brought to you by the trusted team at Breeden Law Office. We thank you for joining us today, and we look forward to sharing more interesting facets of this community next week. Every story, every viewpoint adds another thread to the rich tapestry of Johnston County. If the legal aspects highlighted raise some questions, help is just around the corner at www.breedenfirm.com.